What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Took a brief break yesterday on the four-gamer. The GPPs weren't nearly as good as they were on Wednesday's four-gamer, so we had to take a day when we can get it because we're probably going to be with you every day next week. Lots of shows. We have energy just in case. I know everyone's trying to push the Dr. Pepper Zero, but Alani Blue Slush is where it's at today. I've had too much caffeine, but a little tired, a little wired. Joining me to break it down today, Slim Cliffy. What's going on?
Not a whole lot. Watching the new look Colorado Avalanche before we got on the show. Obviously, there's that huge trade last night. Natchez and Drury going to Colorado, Rantanen going to Carolina, Taylor Hall also going to Carolina in what was a 3-team trade. Now, talk about Carolina when we get to them later in the slate. It's interesting. Last night I was telling you, I went to a movie. I went to go see The Brutalist, which is 3 hours and 40 minutes long, and there was an intermission. It's 15 minutes long, and I was sitting there in my chair, and I was like, well, turn on my phone, check Twitter, see what the scores are in the games, and saw one of the biggest trades that we've had in recent NHL history go down. Fascinating trade. Like I said, we'll talk about Carolina when we get to it. Mikko Rantanen is not in the player pool. Looks like he's going to play tonight, but obviously you can't roster him, but still has an impact on the lineup. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. Interesting 10-gamer considering Rantanen's in Carolina now. He's one of the biggest players on the slate, and he's not available.
Yeah. Do we even know where he's playing? Like, I don't.
No, because he wouldn't have been at morning skate or anything.
Yeah, and then Hall's there too. They could do some interesting stuff with their lineup. They still need a second center unless they're hell bent on making Mikko Rantanen the second line center. But I don't know. We'll have to see what the lines look like at warmups. This is an interesting slate. Unfortunately, there's some late night hammers that we're going to have to hammer home. LaFerriere is back for the Kings. That's kind of important. We have no idea what Tampa lines are going to be. There's game time decisions in Montreal. There's some stuff. There's lots of goalies that aren't confirmed. So, this is an interesting slate, and we'll navigate you through it the best that we can. So let's get into the slate before we do. 100 of you guys trickling in. Thanks for hanging out with us on this lovely Saturday afternoon, wherever you are. And if you do want to go premium, you can click the link in the chat. You can use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. Haas is at the gym on the treadmill right now. He probably is trying to bake a steak in a catering tray if he gets enough friction going, but let's get into the slate. He's just going to go on and on about it. New Jersey Devils with a 3.4 total. Heading into Montreal, the Canadiens have a 2.7. Strangely enough, the only home total 3 or above is the Wild, and they're at a 3. So all these big totals are on the road here tonight. So that's kind of interesting. Brendan Gallagher and Josh Anderson are game time decisions for Montreal. And normally I wouldn't even mention it, but for two reasons. One, that line has actually been pretty good. And if you needed a filler, that's something you can do. Not that it's a great matchup, but more importantly, that line has been going out against top comp sometimes, like a decent amount at home. So if they're not playing, I think that's going to force Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Caulfield out against top comp again, which could be a little interesting because I don't know which line they're going to think is top comp. Like Hughes is obviously their best player.
Oh, it'll be the Hischier line.
That's what I thought, and that's just bad news bears for that top line because that Nico Hischier line, this iteration, like Nico Hischier and Stefan Nason have had excellent numbers at both ends of the ice this season, mostly with Timo Meier, but you throw Bratt into the fray, it's not really going to change a ton. Hischier and Bratt have played a little bit this season, and they have really good numbers, unsurprisingly. So, like, that's a bit of a damper on Montreal 1 for me. Not that I was running out to play them. It is a brutal matchup going up against New Jersey, even with Markstrom out. Like, Jake Allen, you can say whatever you want about Jake Allen. He is one of the most serviceable backups in the league. He probably could start on a handful of teams in this league. So I don't really – I'm not really going into this game prioritizing Montreal. They have a really, really good penalty kill now. Montreal's power play is really good since Line and Hudson have gotten there. So, if you're making 20, you're making 50, you're making 107 or whatever it is today. If Line sneaks into your lineup, he is a little expensive, which is annoying for, just relying on the power play. And I think that's an issue, right? The other night he was 6,300. He plays 15 minutes and he has to get there on the power play. It's kind of annoying. It makes it a pretty rough sell here, but like if you get him into your lineup in a one-off, sure, fine. But I'm really not prioritizing Montreal here. The interesting thing is what to do with New Jersey. Again, right? Montreal has improved defensively, but if Gallagher and Anderson are out, that's a line that actually has been good defensively. It's like you're going to have people in weird spots now. They're going to get a little bit worse defensively. Their penalty kill has improved again, but they take so many penalties that it negates the fact that it's gotten better. So, and you see Nico Hischier, Bratt, and Nason, 17,900 coming in at 5% projected. Like, yes, the Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky line has gotten better defensively since they got reunited, but it's still not great. It's below league average. It's decent for Montreal. So I do really like Hischier, Bratt, Nason here. Hughes, Palat, Cotter, like, I don't know, man. Like, I like Cotter with Hughes, and obviously Palat has played a ton with Hughes, but it's kind of hard to get there when, one, they're getting more ownership than a fully correlated line. Yes, they're $3,300 cheaper, but they have half the top two stack. You only get Hughes on the top power play, and that top line is fully correlated. So I'd much prefer Hischier, Bratt, Nason. If you need the salary savings, I guess you can go Hughes, Cotter, but for me, this is a Nico Hischier line game. If Gallagher and Anderson are in, if you happen to get a little bit of Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, I guess it's fine, but I'm not really prioritizing Montreal here.
So I'll start on the Montreal side. What I'll say is that Emil Heineman's already out. They don't play Michael Pezzetta very much. Like, even if just one of Gallagher or Anderson are out, this could be a night where the Montreal top line, like Suzuki's been regularly playing 20 minutes, but Caulfield and Slavkovsky really haven't. They're closer to like 16 to 18. This might be a night where the top line gets a lot of minutes, just because they literally just have no one else to turn to, right? So, that Montreal top line, you're right. They've been leaky defensively, especially if you look at just like their last 10 games, 3.2 expected goals against. Not very good. They have been generating offense very well. And if they get more ice time, they generate offense well. I'm a huge Jesper Bratt guy. He's not good defensively. He is an offensive winger. Like, he's not going to make Hischier, Nason any better defensively than Timo Meier would. In fact, I think you'd make them worse. So I don't think it's that bad of a matchup for Montreal. What worries me is that New Jersey legit has one of the best penalty kills in the league. And if Montreal doesn't get there on the power play, they have to do it all at 5-on-5. Now, they're cheap enough where they can do it. They're under $16K on DraftKings. If you look at that price range, not a whole lot there. You have a couple lines in the St. Louis Dallas game, which is a tough matchup kind of for both sides. You have San Jose in the late game, which is fine. Detroit against a back-to-back Tampa Bay team, that's fine. Like, I think they're in play just because they're so cheap. I think they might get a ton of minutes, and they don't need 3 or 4 goals to get there in DFS. But I agree with you. I'm not prioritizing them. They'd be the only line that I would full stack. Patrick Laine, I think, is always fine as a one-off. I don't think this is necessarily the situation where I would do it. So I'm kind of out on Montreal. I agree with you that the Hischier line would be the line that I would go to. Hischier and Bratt tend to play about 20 minutes, if not more. Even Stefan Nason been in that 17 to 18 minute range. Nason, he's even shooting. Like, Nason's over 2 shots per game. Like, he's not a guy that's just kind of third wheeling it. So I really do like that Hischier line. Montreal, like, they had a pretty good run defensively. Kind of low key. They've been ass defensively for like a few weeks, and I worry that they're going to slide back to what they were earlier. Like, their last 10 games, the only team with the worst expected goals against rate of 5-on-5 is Chicago. It's Dolbish, who's starting tonight. Him and Montembeault have had some great games and kind of kept Montreal in it recently. So if they're going back to the team that they were through to the like late November, that's a big concern. I think I would just power play stack New Jersey, honestly.
Yeah.
It is a really good power play matchup for them. Montreal's penalty kill is better, but it's still just kind of like middle of the league. And they take so many penalties that they still give quite a few goals against. So I think I would power play stack New Jersey. If I'm even stacking anything, it's the Hischier line. I think Montreal won if I was 20 maxing, MME, those types of things. I'm definitely considering them just because I do think they're in for a bump in minutes if either of or both of Gallagher and Anderson are out, but it's the New Jersey side I have the most interest in.
Concur. Toronto Maple Leafs with a 2.7 total. Heading into Ottawa, the Senators have a 2.8. Matty Nyes is out. This team is already short some players. They're going Matthews, Marner, McMahon, Nylander, Domi, Holmberg, Robertson, Kampf, Lorentz. Wow. Ottawa mixing up their lines again. Going Stützle, Kachuk, Perron, Batherson, Giroux, Grieg, Pinto, Cousins, Amadio. Toronto sticking with their 5-forward power play. Now that Nyes is hurt, Domi moves up to the second line, but he also gets top power play time. He is 2,700. That is an interesting play. Okay, don't Nylander two-man's kind of interesting. Pontus Holmberg just doesn't do too much for me. The top line is interesting because they're a little over 20,000, 19.1% top 2 stack, 11.9% projected ownership. Now, there's a couple things here that make this – I've been wavering on it. There's a couple things, right? Stützle, Kachuk, Perron, they don't have a huge sample. Like, Stützle and Kachuk have played a lot together. They've generally been pretty good. Sanderson-Zub pairing, that's going to go out against Matthews. They have generally been good. So the one thing that is like, oh, I kind of still want to play the Leafs is, one, the Leafs have been very, very concentrated on their scoring recently. And 2, it's Anton Forsberg in net, not Mierlainen or Linus Ullmark. Forsberg has not been great this season. So from that sense, I don't mind some sort of Toronto power play stack here. I don't love it, but they have a 2.7, and we were getting some questions in the Discord like, are you surprised it's that low? Not really, because if they score 3 goals here, it's going to be most likely from those 5 power play guys. So I'm leaning towards wanting to play them. The ownership is fine, I guess, at 11.9%, but like, it's not as good of a matchup as people seem. Like, I don't want to say like it's kind of like the Flyers, but it kind of is like the Flyers. Like, they've generally been a pretty good defensive team. It's the goaltending that's let them down. So like, from that sense, I don't mind Toronto 1, but it's not as good of a matchup 5-on-5 as people think it is. Again, like, I don't mind a Domi Nylander 2-man just because Domi is 2,700 on the top power play. Nylander's down to 6,600. So 9,300 for the 2-man. You're going to get, the Travis Hamonic is on the second pairing now for some ungodly reason. So I don't mind that. Like, Grieg, Giroux, Batherson don't strike me as a line that's going to, incite fear. But again, like, Holmberg doesn't really do much offensively. You're kind of really relying on Nylander to carry the load there, which he can do. So, like, I don't mind Domi Nylander 2-man. Don't mind some sort of power play stack. Don't mind Toronto 1. But I don't know if I'm going to get there in single entry. It's on the list, but we'll see. On the Ottawa side, Tkachuk, Stützle, Perron coming in the highest owned line in this game. 8.5% top 2 stack. 12% projected ownership. Like, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, Matthews and Marner have been decent, but the Leafs haven't been very good defensively. Riley, McCabe have been okay. Stützle and Tkachuk generally have been playing well together. The thing is, like, Tkachuk's been scoreless in his last 9. Like, his individual underlying metrics have been good. So, like, he's creating. It's not like he hasn't been shooting. So I don't mind Stützle, Tkachuk, Perron from the fact that their line's only $16,000. You get Tkachuk and Stützle on the top power play unit, which is important because the Leafs penalty kill sucks. So, from that sense, it makes sense. But if you look down at Grieg, Giroux, Batherson at 12,500, they're coming in under 0.5% owned. Giroux and Batherson are on the top power play unit. Like, there's just so much less ownership there. But again, like, it's kind of a situation where I don't want to stack Ottawa without Brady Tkachuk because they've already been struggling to score. He is their best guy. So honestly, it's both top lines in this game, but I'm struggling to get there in one lineup.
I'll start on the Toronto side. Missing Tavares and Nyes, like, those kind of things matter. You know what I mean? Like, they do have, offensive depth, especially with Bobby McMahon playing the way that he has. Eventually, you just kind of lose too many guys. And it's notable that when I started going through the slate this morning, our projections, not our stochastic projections, had Toronto with a 3.0 total. So that's come down quite a bit to land at 2.7 as we're doing this show right now. Ottawa's been a top 10 defensive team in the league this season. Like, this is not a bad defensive team. This is not the Ottawa Senators of last year or like the last 3 years or anything like that. This is a legitimately good defensive team. The only time they've ever really kind of looked bad is when their goaltending has been bad. It is worrisome that it is Anton Forsberg in net because he hasn't been very good this year. But Ottawa has been legitimately good defensively. Jake Sanderson back in the lineup obviously helps them. So this is pretty much a healthy Sens team going up against a Toronto team that is not. And a Toronto team where, like, unless like one of like 4 guys, like you said, unless like one of 4 guys are scoring goals, nobody's scoring goals. So like, if that, if they can't get there at 5-on-5, this Toronto team is kind of boned because I don't think that they're going to get there on the power play. Ottawa's penalty kill has improved as the season's gone on. It's been fine for most of the season. I don't dislike playing Toronto here tonight. The thing is like they're coming in at around the same ownership as some other lines in that price range that I think I would just flat out rather play here. It's like, we'll get to Nashville later. Nashville's coming in with a little bit higher ownership, but they're $1,100 cheaper. Basically the same top 2 stack percentage. And Nashville is facing Anaheim, whereas Toronto is facing a top 10 defensive team in the league. And they're missing players. You know what I mean? It, like, if you're going to give me roughly the same ownership in the same top 2 stack with a slightly cheaper line, like that's just what I'm going to do. So I think I'm not going to argue against playing anybody that wants to play Toronto. Obviously, Matthews and Marner and Nylander are good enough on their own to break any slate. but you're not getting an ownership discount on them. If they're like 4% owned or something like that, I think that's when I would be considering them. But if they're going to be in double digits, I feel like that's a pass for me. On the Ottawa side, this Ottawa team, I mentioned it on the show. I want to say like maybe a month ago or so. When I was looking at some of the underlying, tracking data that's tracked by a website called All Three Zones. Ottawa as a team has amongst the lowest rate of high danger passes at 5-on-5 in the league. Like in the league. So if you wonder why they're struggling scoring, it's because they're pretty much a hope for a turnover and get a 2-on-1 or a breakaway, or else just try to grind a forechecking goal. Like they aren't a good passing team, to kind of put it in another way. That's why they struggle so much to create a 5-on-5. And that's been the case for basically years with this team. And they're kind of like Toronto in that sense, where you're not getting an ownership discount on them. They're coming in over-owned at 12%. Now the price is fine at 16,000. Does David Perron last the whole game there? I don't know. I feel fine playing a Brady Tkachuk one-off because, like he said, he's still generating. I think he has 33 shots in his last 9 games without a goal. So, like, it's not like he's not shooting the puck. He's still shooting 3.5+ shots a game. I think I would probably just like one-off Tkachuk or something like that rather than full stack anything. I honestly just don't have a ton of interest in both sides.
Yeah. I was trying to talk myself into it. I just couldn't do it. So we move on. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3.2 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 2.9. So Tampa started the game yesterday with Point, Kucherov, Gensel, Hagel, Cirelli, Esamont. They ended the game with Paul, Point, Kucherov, Hagel, Cirelli, Gensel. I don't know what they're going to do here tonight because obviously they played yesterday. We'll have to see at warm-ups. Now, they went back to old power play units, I think. I think it was Point, Kucherov, Gensel, Chaffee, Radish was the top unit. I don't even know if that's the old unit, but the second unit's now Paul, Hagel, Cirelli, Kucherov, Hedman. Chaffee scored on the power play, so I would imagine that's going to stick. We'll have to see what the even strength lines look like. Either way, this is a good power play spot. So, like, I think you could do something like Point, Kucherov, Chaffee, because, like, he's min price. And this is a good power play spot, like I just mentioned. So I would do some sort of power play stack here with the uncertainty until we get definitive lines. Like if they come back to Point, Kucherov, Gensel, that's kind of going to suck because they're going to be really, really expensive. We'll have to see what they do. But again, like Darren Radish and Mitchell Chaffee, super cheap to where like you can just straight up power play stack them. And that will help bring their cost down. You can just have the 2 cheap guys there, adding Kucherov. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. It would be some sort of power play stack, even if we get definitive lines. You know what I mean? So, like, that's what I'm looking at on the Tampa Bay side. On the Detroit side, we missed Jonas Johansson yesterday. It's going to be Andrei Vasilevsky in net here tonight. I think you can just straight up go Larkin, Raymond, Casper. They're up to a 100-minute sample. They've actually been creating a lot with Casper there. And they're coming in right around their top 2 stack there, 15,400. So I put them into a bucket in that mid-range where I'm actually kind of interested in them. If you want to leave off Casper, add in, Tarasenko for another $200 and get more power play exposure, sure. But, like, honestly, I think I'd just leave Casper there. You want to go to Cop, Tarasenko, DeBrincat, 11.5. Like, I get it from the price, but they're coming in 4x their top 2 stack. They're probably going to run into Hagel, Cirelli. So it would be Detroit one for me, and it would be some sort of Tampa Bay power play stack.
Yeah. I'll start on the Detroit side. I agree. I don't mind Larkin, Raymond, Casper because at 15,400, they're very reasonably priced. Larkin's been shooting a ton. 14 games. Today's game 15 with McLellan behind the bench. The first 14 games, 61 shots on goal. That's like 4.3 per game. Like, he's been shooting a lot, and Raymond has been shooting as well. Marco Casper is cheap enough where you can just throw him in. Here's the thing. It's a bad power play matchup for Detroit. That's why, like, I don't mind stacking their top line because I'm not worried about power play correlation here. Like, Tampa Bay has generally had one of the better penalty kills in the league. They've given up the 5th fewest power play goals against per game in the league this season. Over the last 5+ weeks alone, it's like 7th fewest. Like, they just don't give up a ton of power play goals. And obviously, the key to Detroit's, success over those 14 games with McLellan in the lineup is the power play. The team has scored 48 goals. 19 of them have been on the power play. Like, 40% of their goals have come on the power play. So in a bad power play matchup, especially without Patrick Kane, you mentioned it on the other show, like, Vladimir Tarasenko, even at these stages of their careers, is not Patrick Kane. I'm not huge on the Detroit power play guys. So, like, Larkin, Raymond, Casper, I think would be where I would go. The Kucherov line with Point and Gensel, if that's what it ends up being, has been kind of leaky defensively all season. It's been getting worse as the season's gone on, which is why I think they've been broken up over the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of games where they just don't play together. It's not a bad matchup at 5-on-5. So I think Detroit won. They're in play because they're 5% owned. They're moderately priced. It's a 2.9 total. It's not like it's nothing. So I don't mind Detroit won here. That's pretty much all I like on the Detroit side. On the Tampa side, I agree with you with power play stacking because it is a good power play matchup for them. Detroit is on the penalty kill has struggled basically all season long, giving up 9 power play goals against in the 14 games since McLellan took over. That is not a good number. So I do like, the Tampa Bay power play guys. And as you mentioned, Darren Radish, 3,600, Mitchell Chaffee. Chaffee might only play like 8 or 9 minutes, which kind of sucks, but like a third of his ice time is going to be on one of the best power plays in the league. So like
he's like what's his face? That guy you love on the Edmonton power play.
Yeah, Alex Chason.
Yeah, he's Alex Chason.
He played like 9 minutes and scored like 18 goals a season. And half of them would be on the power play or something. It was nuts. So like, because they're so cheap, and I mentioned to you, I mean, the price drop started yesterday, but these guys the price of this line's come down a lot. It's 23,900 for Point Gensel Kucherov. It was a couple weeks ago that there was $3,000 more expensive. So they are kind of more reasonably priced. I would probably build around Kucherov and Radish and just go from there and wait to see what things look like in warm up. But I do like the Tampa Bay power play guys here tonight. Kind of do whatever you want, but I would make sure that one of the guys that I have in my lineup is Kucherov.
Oh, yeah. Definitely got to build around Kucherov there. LA Kings with a 3.1 total heading into Columbus. Rolling. Well, they're not really rolling, but they're scoring. Our scoring Columbus Blue Jackets have a 2.5 total. I badmouthed them the other night. I said I'm out on them going into Carolina. They scored 4 goals. I said I'd never badmouth them again. And then I didn't realize that they're playing the Kings here tonight. So might have to renege on my word here. But for the Kings side, it looks like Alex Laferriere is going to be back. Our top stacks reflect him playing with Danault and Fiala. We both kind of agreed that's where he's going to go. In the top stacks right now, we have Kempe, Kopitar, Turcotte, Fiala, Laferriere, Danault, Fogle, Byfield, Trevor Moore, and we have Akil Thomas down on the 4th line or out. Like, that's going to be interesting because they like Akil Thomas, so I don't know where he's going to go.
I mean, he's going to be on the 4th line.
Yeah. So Columbus going Marchenko, Voronkov, Fantilli, Kent Johnson, Luca, Del, Bell, Bellas, JVR, Danforth, Olivier, Zach Aston Reese. Boone Jenner skated with the team this morning. He's not ready. They're trying to get him ready around for the Four Nations. I don't even know if he's on the Four Nations, but that's right around the time he's going to be coming back. Listen, I love our Columbus Blue Jackets. Don't get me wrong. This is outside of going into Carolina, where I said I'm out back-to-back on the road. This is legit the worst matchup possible. The Kings are still under 2 expected goals against per 60. They're the only team in the NHL under 2. It's like 1.8. They're disgustingly good defensively at 5-on-5. The Mikey Anderson Gavrikov pairing is disgusting. They're obviously not as great on the road, but this whole team up and down the lineup is good. Marchenko, Voronkov, Fantilli are 17,200, coming in at 1.7% projected. If I was making 20 to 150, if they got into my crunches or whatever optimizer you use, I would leave it just because they've been rolling. But I am not going out of my way to get Columbus 1 in here. You know what I mean? So I'm out on them in single entry. Can lightning strike twice? We're definitely going to find out. But I'm out on Columbus in single entry. The Kings side is a lot more interesting to me, especially if Laferriere goes back with Fiala and Deneau. That line's only coming in at 6.2% projected. Now, I would assume Laferriere goes back on one of the power play units. I just don't know which one. Maybe he takes Byfield's spot on the top unit. I'm not sure how that's going to go because this is a good power play spot, but it's also a pretty good 5-on-5 spot. And that line with, Deneau, Fiala, and Laferriere have been excellent this season. Laferriere was the one King who didn't have shooting percentage issues, and he's back. But we'll see what happens when he gets back. But it would be that line. If you do want to go to Kopitar, Kempe, Turcotte, I think that's fine as well. 2.8% projected. I think, the Byfield line would be third in line, but they are the cheapest, and you can fit them with basically anybody. So if you do need to go to them, that's fine. But I think for me, it would be the Deneau line 1, Kopitar 2, Byfield 3.
Yeah, I'll start with our Columbus Blue Jackets. I agree. I don't really have a ton of interest in them here tonight. We did say that the other night, and then they kind of had a pretty good night again. But this is obviously the Kings are just a really, really bad matchup. Like you said, they're tremendous at 5-on-5. They can get there, or they can shut things down, on the penalty kills. So it's just a bad matchup for Columbus. I will say, since Monahan went down, that top line's at 3.2 expected goals, 3.9 actual goals per 60. They have been generating offensively very, very well. So I don't hate the idea of, if you're 20 maxing, of maybe sneaking in a Columbus here just because, there's no ownership and their price is down to 17,200, which is very reasonable. I don't hate the idea of playing them. I just think when I look at that price range, there are some other lines that I would rather play, that Devils Hischier line that we talked about, 5% projected ownership. You know what I mean? We'll get to the New York Islanders a little later. Don't even hate the Islanders here tonight, and their top line's at 2.5% ownership in the same price range. So I just think there are other spots to go to. On the Los Angeles side, now Laferriere was taken off the power play before he got injured. It was a couple weeks before. In the Kings power play, I think it's 2 goals or 3 goals since Christmas, which is when Laferriere was taken off. It's they haven't been scoring at all. They've switched it up with Jordan Spence, a goal here and there. I do wonder if Laferriere doesn't just get Byfield's spot back, because that it's the one weakness the King. I mean, they have a couple weaknesses, but it's the one real glaring weakness the Kings have is they've just had a bad power play for basically 3 months now. So I do wonder if they try to juice it up with Laferriere. We give you Fiala and Laferriere on the top power play unit. We're just kind of guessing. Maybe it's something they work into. They give Byfield another game, and if it doesn't work, then Laferriere gets the next one, something like that. But anyways, you're mentioning that Fiala Danault Byfield line, 3.4 expected goals per 60 in 190 minutes together this season at 5-on-5. That's really good. And the key is like they're going to see second and third line matchups from Columbus. They're going to see, they're not going to see a ton of shutdown matchups. They're not going to see anything like that. Like, it's a really good matchup for them. Coming in a little bit over-owned, 6.2% against 3.1% top two stack, but they're very reasonably priced. They even have a higher top two stack percentage than the Kopitar-Kempe line. So I do think it makes a lot of sense just to go to Fiala, Laferriere, Danault here. If you do need some sort of filler stack, that's my target in this game.
Dallas Stars with a 2.9 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.6. Dallas played last night. They beat Vegas 4-3. That was with Jake Ottinger. So it will be Casey DeSmith in that. Casey DeSmith having a quietly good season as the Dallas Stars backup. He has a .905 save percentage, which is above league average, which is kind of surprising. But, like, he's played well. He's obviously a step down from Jake Ottinger. And Stars going Robertson, Johnston, Dadonov, Duchesne, Ben, Bork, Hintz, Stankov, and Steele. Blues going Kyrou, Holloway, Shen, Thomas, Buchnevich, Bolduc, Neighbors, Saad, Sundquist. Now, I'll start on the Blues side. They have a 2.6 home total. It's not ideal. This isn't the best matchup, but it is Casey DeSmith. And I will say Kyrou, Holloway, Shen will go out a fair bit against Robertson, Johnson, Dadonov, and that line has been pretty leaky defensively since they've gotten put together. So, like, I don't mind Kyrou, Holloway, Shen at 15,300, 3% projected ownership. I'll throw them in a basket with Detroit 1. Like, I don't know which – honestly, I think I kind of prefer Detroit 1 as a full stack, but I don't mind this Kyrou, Holloway, Shen line. The one thing that makes me like Detroit a little bit better is Dallas has an elite penalty kill. So, you can take with that what you will, but I don't mind Kyrou, Holloway, Shen. On the Dallas side, like, Robertson's been rolling. So I don't mind that line of 16,000, but I think the line I prefer the best is Duchesne, Ben, Bork, just because they're going to avoid that Holloway line, which has been decent defensively. After that, these line combinations have been generally awful. So, like, I don't mind Duchesne, Ben, Bork, even don't mind Hintz, Stankov, and Steele. You can do whatever you want with Steele, but, like, if you need filler lines, I don't mind the Dallas second or third lines. I think I don't know if I'd full stack Dallas one, like a Robertson one off or two man with Johnston is probably where I'd go. But if you want a full stack and you need a cheap filler, Duchesne line and Hintz line for me.
Yeah, I don't mind going back to Shen, Kyrou, Holloway. They're not going to get there every game, but they've generally been playing pretty well. I was looking at their last 10 games to see if there's been like a slowdown since Montgomery took over. It's been 2 months now. So I looked at their last 10 games. Their last 10 games, they're still at 69 shot attempts, 3.1 expected goals, 4.2 actual goals per 60. At 5-on-5, they've still been really good. So I don't hate the idea of going to Holloway, Shen, and Kyrou at 15,300. Like, they're in that price range. We talked about Detroit. Like, I would probably rather play Detroit here, but you can throw them in the same bucket as you would like Detroit and Montreal as lines to consider in that price range. But I'm not specifically targeting them. What I will mention is that St. Louis second line, Thomas, Buchnevich, and Bolduc. Zach Bolduc is a guy that's kind of impressed me this year. I've written about him elsewhere. He's not this guy is still technically a rookie. He's only 21 years old. He played 25 games last year. Hasn't scored a ton. He has 10 goals in 64 games, but that's playing 12 minutes a game. He's good defensively. He's not a good playmaker, but he's good in transition, and he shoots the puck. Like, he has the second highest rate of high danger shot attempts on the St. Louis Blues this season of all their regular forwards. And Thomas and Buchnevich are two guys that can get in the puck. That line's $12,900. So they're basically filler status, coming in with absolutely no ownership. If they get one goal, it's kind of fine. If they get two goals, you're kind of laughing. So, Thomas, he's quietly been pretty good. Like, it's been Buchnevich that's kind of sucked this year, honestly, which I really didn't see coming. But Bolduc can kind of stabilize things defensively. And if he can just put himself in a decent position to shoot, they'll get him the puck. I don't mind Thomas, Buchnevich, and Bolduc if you need a sub, $13K filler stack here tonight. I would probably still rather play that Kings line that we just talked about. They're only a few $100s more expensive. But if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I would definitely be considering St. Louis too if I needed a filler here tonight. On the Dallas side, you're right about Jason Robertson. It's absolutely crazy how good he's been. 11 goals, 16 assists, 27 points in his last 20 games. That's like a 110-point pace over the course of a full season. Like, he's been outstanding for about the last 6 weeks. Him and Johnston have generally played very well together. That would probably be the line that I would go to. I wouldn't hesitate to take off the Donoff just to put in an extra power play guy, because St. Louis's power play itself isn't bad. The goaltending on the power play is a whole different matter. Last 5 weeks, their penalty kill save percentage is .750. Now, you wouldn't expect it to stay that bad all season long. It's certainly not going to stay there through to the end of the season. But it has been something that the Blues have generally struggled with all year. I think it's the 6th lowest save percentage on the penalty kill in the league this season. So, I think I would kind of want the Dallas power play guys. So, like, if I made a Dallas lineup, I'd have no problem sliding in Rope Hintz or Jamie Benn to go with my Robertson, Johnston two-man. So I have no problem playing Robertson, Johnston, Donoff, just all three. I would probably take off the Donoff and put in one of Benn or Hintz. In general, I don't think I'm going to have a line out of this game, but I think there are playable lines on both sides if I was playing a bunch of lineups here tonight.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Calgary Flames with a 2.6 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 3 total. Goalie's always important for these two teams. It's going to be Dustin Wolf against Marc-Andre Fleury. Marc-Andre Fleury is actually having a pretty decent season at 40 years old. Gustafson's still better. Dustin Wolf, obviously, way better than Dan Vladar. Wolf has a .918 save percentage on the season. The Calgary Flames have flip-flopped Jacob Pelletier, Martin Pospisil, so they're going Huberdeau, Kadri, Pelletier, Coronado, Backlund, Coleman, Pospisil, Sharangovich, Lomberg. Minnesota going Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi, Boldy, Eriksson, Ek, Hartman. I'm not exactly sure flip-flopping Pelletier and Pospisil are going to do on either end. I don't know. It makes a tremendous difference. And when you look at Eriksson, Ek, Boldy, Hartman, they're going to go out against that Kadri line. They're coming in at 14% projected at 15-1. Like, I'd rather just go play Detroit 1. I'd rather maybe just go play that St. Louis line we just talked about. So, like, at that ownership, I don't want to say it's an easy fade, but I'm not prioritizing them at 14% ownership, especially with the season Joe Eriksson Ek has had. He's a very good player, but he just has not been shooting the puck this season for whatever reason. So you're relying on the score sheet. I don't know, man. Like, they're coming in at 14%. Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi coming in at 7.7%. I know going up against Backlund, Coleman, Coronado is not ideal, and going up against Wolf is not ideal either. But, like, Kadri and Huberdeau have been excellent defensively this season as well. So, like, I don't particularly love the Wild here. If I was going to play a Wild line, it would be Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi, just getting way less ownership. But, like, even 7.5% doesn't feel great. I'd never say no to a Kaprizov one-off. But I don't like if it was Dan Vladar starting, we'd be having a completely different conversation. But Dustin Wolf has been legitimately good this season, so I don't think I'll be prioritizing the Wild here, which is funny because they're the only home team on this slate with a total of 3 or higher. But again, I don't love the Wild here. On the Calgary side, like with Spurgeon back, Faber not, on the second pair, like going into Minnesota is kind of not fun now. Their penalty kill still sucks, but the Flames power play sucks. So I'm not truly worried about it. Fleury's in net, which, he's not as good as Gustafsson, but he's actually had a pretty good season. I think if anything, I would go to Backlund, Coleman, Coronado, but I don't think I'm going to have a stack and single entry from either side of this game.
Yeah, I agree on Backlund, Coleman, Coronado. That would be the line I would target on the Flame side. Like, I don't mind Jacob Peltier. I don't really think he's good enough to play on the top line. They just don't really have options. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it boils down to. The thing is like those lines are coming in a little bit over-owned. Calgary always does. It's just insane. The top line, 5.4%. The Backlund line, 4.3%. Both lines are around 13K. At that point, I'll just go play Los Angeles. Like, that's just the way that I look at it. I'd much rather play the Kings on the road against the Blue Jackets than Calgary on the road against Minnesota. Like, I don't think it's really that close. So I'm basically out on the Flames. I kind of don't mind the Minnesota side here, honestly. Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi are 19K. It's a pretty reasonable price for that line, considering where they've been priced at times this season. And as a 3-man unit this year, 60 shot attempts, 2.9 expected goals, 4 actual goals per 60 minutes. Even Zuccarello's up near 3 shots per game over his last 10 games. Kaprizov and Rossi have, since the start of last year, basically been able to create offensively pretty well. Now, it's not a great matchup, but I feel like 19K is a very reasonable price. There's not a ton in that price range. Like, if you looking at Toronto, which is coming in with nearly double the ownership. You look at Nashville, which is coming in with more than double the ownership. I feel like this is a team, like you said, with the highest home total, with a really good top line at 5-on-5 top line. The Calgary penalty kill has not been good this year. Better lately, but better still below average, and generally on the season in the bottom third of the league. So I don't mind Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi. That's probably the line that I would go. If you want to take off Rossi, put in Eriksson Ek or something like that for power play correlation, it's okay. But Minnesota 1 is, considering that they're not getting any ownership with the highest home total, I feel like, yeah, it's not a great matchup, but I'm kind of interested in them here just because they're coming in with that single-digit ownership, and Nashville and Toronto is coming in so much higher.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to play a Wild line, it would definitely be the top line. It's just like just because they're in a price range with something else, other lines that I don't really like or whatever. I don't know, like, if I would just build in that price range. Like, I do worry about Wolf and that. I do worry about the 5-on-5. But again, like, Kaprizov is one of those guys where it's just like, oh, it's a bad matchup, and you look up and he has 37.3 DK points. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys. So, yeah, from that standpoint, I definitely agree that Minnesota is in play. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.3 total heading into Long Island. That is just one of the worst things ever. The Islanders have a 2.4 total. I will say the complex that they play on is very, very nice, but let's just not go to Long Island. Mikko Rantanen not in the player pool. I don't think Taylor Hall is either. I don't even know where these guys are going to come in. Like, I was having a spirited conversation with the line matching guy, Quick Party. He thinks Taylor Hall's a 4th liner. I respectfully disagreed there. I still think he has some playmaking ability where, like, the problem is Jesperi Kotkaniemi is their second line center. Like, that's the biggest issue right now. So, like, even if Mikko Rantanen goes to the top line with Aho and Svechnikov, like, I'm not sure they're going to take Jarvis off the Stahl line, because
that's the one line that I feel fairly confident saying is going to be a line when warmups start.
Yeah, because that line has been absolutely disgusting at both ends of the ice this season. I don't think that they're going to move him. Rantanen probably can go play on either side of Aho if, like, they want to keep Svechnikov on the left side or whatever. Maybe they load the top line. It's Svechnikov, Rantanen, Aho, something like that. Maybe they leave Jackson Blake up there with Mikko Rantanen and Aho. We'll have to see. Like, we just don't know, and that's kind of an issue. It is Marcus Hogberg in net. And like Cliffy said, he has confidence that Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook can be together, and so do I, but they're up to 13,100, right? They're not coming in with much ownership, but in that price range, I'm going to go play that Kings line. But again, I don't mind Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook here. Stahl's having quite a season. Jarvis plays a ton. He's on the top power play unit. You know what I mean? So I honestly don't mind that Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook line. They're not far behind that Kings line for me. But, like, I make one lineup, so I have to make cuts. And if I was going to play a line in that range, it would be the Kings. I just don't know the other lines where I can be like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Like, obviously, one-off Aho here is fine. We just have to see where these guys are. I don't think I'd one-off Svechnikov. He's been bad this season. For whatever reason, I don't know. But we'll have to see where these guys are. The one line we both feel confident is the Stahl line, and I like them. Now, the Islanders side is a little bit interesting because, yes, they have a 2.4 total, which sucks, but Carolina hasn't been great defensively. The one thing that worries me from the Islanders side is this. With Dobson out, their expected goals at 5-on-5 dropped 20%. Now, I know Tony DeAngelo is probably going to play here tonight, and he's a good puck mover. I cannot imagine them playing Tony DeAngelo Noah Dobson minutes. Maybe they do.
No. Pelech, Romanov, and Pulak are all probably going to play somewhere between 22 and 25 minutes, and then DeAngelo, it's his first game back. They're not going to play him 22 minutes. He'll get, like, if he plays, which is still not confirmed. They just confirmed he cleared waivers. If DeAngelo plays, it'll be like 15 minutes.
Yeah. So, like, I worry from the sense that their offensive production drops off without Dobson. It was already not great to begin with. If anything, I'd go to Lee Horvat Barzal just because they've been very, very good, but they're 17,300, and in that price range, I'm just going to play Nico Heischer's lines. You know what I mean? In MME, like, at 2.5% at 17.3, fully correlated. Yes, Carolina has a great penalty kill, and yes, the Islanders' power play isn't great, but it's still something. So, like, I would get to them a little bit in MME. That's the only line I would have interest in. I have a big worry without Dobson, but my favorite line in this game, until we know concrete Carolina lines, is Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook.
Yeah, I'll just say, I'll echo that. Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook would be the line I would play. I mean, we'll see what the Carolina lines look like, but technically speaking, 1/3 of their top six could not be in the player pool tonight. You know what I mean? Depending where Rantanen and Hall lineup. So, like, what are you supposed to do with that? So, yeah, for me, it's, if you want to do like a two-man of like Aho and Jarvis or something like that, I guess that's okay. But if I'm stacking an even strength line, it's got pretty much only has to be Stahl, Jarvis, and Martinook. Might be the only even strength line you can play here tonight. So,
yeah.
I mean, there you go. But I agree with you. I'd rather play the Kings. Like, on the Islanders side, I'm not big on the Islanders here tonight. The main reason, like, 2.5% ownership, it's low. That Hischer line we talked about earlier is at 5%. Even our beloved Columbus Blue Jackets are lower at 1.7%. So, like, there are just other lines in that price range to play. Now, that Islanders top line is up over 200 minutes since Patrick Waugh took over. 74 shot attempts, 3.1 expected goals. Horvat and Barzal are probably going to play over 20 minutes. even with Siplikov back in the lineup down on the third line. So like probably going to get a lot of minutes from them. And Carolina's goaltending has been shaky. Like Carolina's defensive numbers have started to creep back up a little bit. Even if they're better defensively, the goaltending's been bad enough where they'll give up 3 goals on 18 shots or something like that. You know what I mean? So if I'm playing a bunch of lineups, I'm considering the Islanders single entry. I'm probably out. If anything, it's the Jarvis line, but like it's a bad matchup for the Islanders. They're missing their best offensive defenseman, and like 1/3 of Carolina's top 6 isn't in the player pool. So I don't know what we're supposed to do here.
I know that you said they've gotten better defensively recently, but bringing in Taylor Hall and Mikko Rantanen isn't going to help them defensively. And they traded their second best defensive center in Jack Drury.
Exactly.
Jack Drury's an excellent defensive center.
Exactly. Like Mikko Rantanen's value is offensive. It's not defensive. And it's the same thing with Taylor Hall, just magnified because he's like 6 or 7 years older than him.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyone but the Islanders, I'd have more interest. But Nashville Predators with a 3.4 total. Let's get to these late night games. Heading into Anaheim, the Ducks have a 2.6 total. You want to talk about Jason Robertson heaters. Philip Forsberg's on one here. And their prices dropped $2,200 since the last game. Why? Because fuck them. That's why. Forsberg, Marchessault, Stamkos, fully correlated, 19,200. 19.7% top 2 stack, 15.8% projected ownership. I think they're projected for the highest owned line of the night. Now it's not 37% like it was the other night, but 15.8% projected on a 10-game slate is rather high. I have similar analysis to when they played the Sharks. I don't think I would just put in Nashville 1 and go about my day. I think I'm adding in Yossi, I'm adding in Ryan O'Reilly, or I'm adding in both. This is a very, very good power play spot. The Ducks penalty kill sucks. I don't know who the Ducks goalie is going to be, but like
it's John Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, like John Gibson has had a good season. Lucas Dostal has been better. Gibson may stand on his head and still give up 3 or 4 goals here. You know what I mean? Like, yes, Nashville started the season a very long stretch with them being the lowest scoring team in the league. Now they're one of the highest in the last few weeks. That top line has been rolling. Yes, they've been shooting like 9 million %. But this is a great, great matchup, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. So I'm in on Nashville 1. I'm just not stacking Nashville 1 and moving along, though. I'm probably, if I'm going to play them, I'm probably just going to full power play stack them. So Nashville 2 for a line under 10K if you're looking to get expensive elsewhere would interest me at 2.9% because get O'Reilly on the top power play unit. That line with Nyquist and Vinny Hinostroza has been really, really good. If you need to get even cheaper, Fedor Svechkov and Tommy Novak have been very good this season. They're even cheaper. But really, this is a Nashville power play game for me. On the Ducks side, like Vetrano Terry Strome at 14.9 is fine, but they're into that range with Detroit 1 and all those guys. And I don't know if I really want to get to the Ducks here. I don't mind them. But I think I prefer Detroit here. The line that's interesting to me is McTavish, Gauthier, Fabry at 10,200. Like they've been decent. They're going to avoid that top line. It's not that Nashville's a great defensive team or whatever, but if you need a filler, I would probably just go to McTavish, Gauthier, Fabry.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Nashville power play game. Over the last 5 weeks, Anaheim's at 3 times shorthanded per game. It's 5th highest rate in the league. And I think 4th highest on the slate here tonight. Nashville is drawing power plays at a fairly reasonable rate. I think they're 3rd in the league over the last 5 weeks. And obviously their power play is really good. They had 5 power play goals in 2 games against San Jose. They went, this is like 5 for 8 or something like that. So yeah, I mean, this is a game for the Nashville power play guys. And I agree with you. Like if I play Nashville, I don't think I'm just playing the top line. It's probably just a full-on power play stack, or at the very least adding in Roman Yossi. John Gibson has been good this year. Dostal has been a little bit better if you look at some of the goals saved above expected metrics. But honestly, on a per minute basis, it's not by much. So, like Gibson has been playing well. But like you said, Anaheim's bad enough defensively where Gibson could have a really good game and still give up 4 goals on 40 shots. And that's just kind of the way that Anaheim is. So Nashville power play for me. Their power play is very good. Anaheim's penalty kill is not good. Anaheim takes a ton of penalties. That's just kind of where I would go. Top line plus Yossi, top line plus O'Reilly and Yossi, something like that. If you want to dip down, you need to fill or stack with Novak and Svechkov or something like that. I think that's okay, but I think this is a Nashville power play game for me. On the Anaheim side, I don't mind Gauthier, McTavish, and Fabry as a stack. What I will say is like that Nashville top line has not been great defensively, generally speaking. Like about league average is probably the best you could say. And Terry Strome and Vetrano, 2.8 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60 since Christmas. Going back further, it's been about the same. They've been pretty good together. What I worry about is ice time. Because there was a time where they're all getting around 19 minutes. Now that Trevor Zegras is back, it's basically pretty even ice time. They're doing that Seattle thing where like 10 forwards will play between 14 and 17 minutes or something like that. It's a little bit annoying. Anaheim 1 is fine. I'm worried about minutes here, so they're playable, but I think for me it'd be more MME. For me, this is just a Nashville power play game.
Yep. Washington Capitals with a 2.8 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 2.6 total. I didn't forget to use it. This game sucks. New lines for Vancouver. They're going, I don't know what they're doing. They're going DeBrusk, Suter, Garland, Heinen, Miller, Besser, Hoglander, Pedersen, Carlson. Sure. Washington going Ovechkin, Strome, McMichael, Wilson, Protas, Dubois, yada, yada, yada. Looks like Charlie Lindgren's going to be in net coming off a shutout for Washington. Doesn't really change much for me. Like I would be out on Vancouver with Thompson in net, and with Lindgren in net, I'm out on Vancouver. So there's that. I just don't like these lines. Okay, if anything, if you got to a little bit of Miller, Besser, Danton, Heinen, sure. That would be the one line I would consider an MME. The other lines, nothing really super exciting. Just because they're going to go out against Strome, Ovechkin, McMichael, and they've been atrocious. Not that JT Miller has been anything worth a damn in the past few weeks, but whatever. On the Washington side, I don't have a ton of interest. If anything, I'm going to Wilson, Protas, Dubois at 14,200. But again, like honestly, I'm not prioritizing this game at all.
Miller and Besser, 100 minutes together since Christmas, 2.7 expected goals, 4.3 actual goals per 60. It's been very hit or miss. They haven't really had much consistency. Every now and then they'll look like a pretty good line. Most of the time they look like they're going to get ran out of the rink. But like you said, they're going up against that Ovechkin, Strome, McMichael line. That line together, 76 shot attempts against, 4.1 expected goals against per 60. They're getting like 950 save percent. Strome and Ovechkin are getting like 950 save percentage behind them at 5-on-5 this season. It's like Logan Thompson has really saved them. Charlie Lindgren got a shutout the other night. That sucked. Can
confirm.
And that was Seattle, which is kind of comparable to Vancouver these days, honestly. But that Miller, Besser, Dan Heinen line is, I believe it's 12,700. Like they're basically a filler stack. You know what I mean? At a certain point, the price just gets low enough where I think you kind of have to consider them no matter what. Like they'll still play a ton with Quinn Hughes. You'll still get 2 guys on the top power play unit. They still get the weaker goalie in net for Washington, and they get a great 5-on-5 matchup. Like just because they are like if they were 16,500, I would definitely wouldn't be considering them. Between 12 and 13K, I think you kind of have to. Just because they're so cheap. That'd be the only line I have interest in. I'm not playing the Suter line. I'm definitely not playing Pettersson. By the way, there are two Elias Petterssons on Vancouver now. One's a defenseman. Make sure you put the right one in your lineup if you're playing Pettersson for some reason. On the Washington side, it would be going back to that Pierre-Luc Dubois line. They've been really, really good together. Dubois, Wilson, Protas, 3.2 expected goals, 4.5 actual goals per 60 minutes. They're all skating around 17 to 18 minutes a game. What worries me is that it's Lankinen in net and not Demko. It kind of feels weird to say that. Imagine saying that 12 months ago that you would rather face Kevin Lankinen. But Demko's just been awful since he returned from injury. Lankinen, he kind of had a downturn recently. I think it might have just been over usage a little bit, just because he wasn't. I think it's the most starts in the last 4 years, and it came in the first half of the season for him. He probably just not used to the workload. It's a little bit of a tougher matchup. I don't mind that Wilson, Protas, Dubois line, 14,200, sub 1% ownership. There are just other lines in that price range I'd rather play. I think, honestly, it feels weird to say, but all things considered, I think I'd rather play the Vancouver side here, and it's a JT Miller line, just because they're so cheap.
Yeah, no, the price is definitely a factor. They've played 35 minutes together this season. They haven't scored a goal yet, but, the matchup is good. 35 minutes is like 3 games at 5-on-5. Anyone can get shut out in 3 games, but late night hammer. Florida Panthers, 3.7 total. Heading into San Jose, the Sharks have a 2.3 total. Florida going Reinhart, Barkov, Kachuk, Verhaeghe, Lundell, Bachquist, Bennett, Lusteron, and Samoukevich. Sharks, they're going Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund, Granlund, Zetterlund, Smith. On the Sharks side, it is Bob and net. He's save percentage is worse than league average on the season. He is a bit leaky. Florida has been taking a fair bit of penalties recently. In MME, don't mind some Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund at 16,000, 2.8% projected ownership. That power play with Wallman has actually been decent. Florida's been taking a ton of penalties. Bob's been leaky this season. I don't mind the Sharks top line in MME. But this is a Florida game. It's an excellent, excellent power play spot. Reinhart, Barkov, Kachuk, 21,500. 23.2% top 2 stack, 12.4% projected ownership. Now, historically, this line has been absolutely insane together. They've been together almost 70 minutes this season. They've had trouble creating expected goals, and they haven't scored. I think they have 1 goal together. Now, historically, you look at the back of the baseball card, it is insane how good they've been. This is also an excellent power play matchup, and they're fully correlated. So, all things considered, I think they're my favorite line on the board if you take out, price and ownership, whatever. I guess in terms of power play stacking, you're going to have to choose between them and Nashville. But, I do really, really like Florida 1 here. I think Florida 3 is interesting for Hagee, Lundell, Bachquist. I think this is another one of those situations where I don't think I would just play Florida 1 and move along, because it looks like Aaron Ekblad's going to be back. I don't know if you can. I'm sure you can. It's a lot more expensive to full power play stack Florida than it is Nashville, but I think that is the route I would go. I'd be more likely just to full stack Florida 1 than I would Nashville 1 and move along, just because they're more expensive and you can get different with different filler lines, this and that. But I think I would try to get Verhaeghe into that stack. So I don't think you need a full 5-man, but I would definitely try to bring along either Verhaeghe or Ekblad with you. But, Florida 1 for sure in play, probably my favorite line of the night. I don't mind Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund in MME.
Yeah, Florida 1, the top 2 stack percentage on the night at over 23%. They're the only line over 20%. They have had trouble generating some offense. I wonder how much of it is missing Ekblad. Not that Ekblad's like a great puck mover, but it's one of those things like you take him out, it's like who else is left? There's like Forsling and a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Shout out to Uvis.
Uvis.
So, I do wonder if getting Ekblad like helps in that sense. I really do like Florida 1 here. I'm not worried about any of the matchups from San Jose's side. Penalty kill, 5-on-5. They're even starting Georgiev. You get the worst goalie. Like for me, I really do like Florida 1. Add in Ekblad on the blue line, put in Verhaeghe, make it a power play stack, do what you want. But yeah, I do love the Panthers top line here. On the San Jose side, I don't mind the Celebrini line because they're not going to get a ton of that Barkov matchup. They're going to get a lot more second and third line matchups, obviously. That's good. Florida is taking a ton of penalties. The penalty kill has been on a slide. So it is a perfectly correlated line. I like the line a lot better when they're about $2,000 cheaper. I'd rather pay, that New Jersey Hischier line's only $1,900 more expensive. I'd probably rather just go play New Jersey. You know what I mean? But I do think San Jose's firmly in play here. I would probably still rather play like Montreal over them, Detroit, even that Dallas Robertson line. So like they're not quite a priority, but I think they're fine to play. But like this is a Florida 1 game, but start to finish.
Yeah, oh yeah. Let's talk about some defensemen here, as Morgan Geekie has double donged in the third period, and Boston is up 2-1 if you are playing that showdown. Cool. Top of the board, there's Werenski at 8,600, Quinn Hughes 7,500, Yossi 7,400, Victor Hedman 6,400. I'm going Yossi 1, Hedman 2, Werenski 3, Quinn Hughes 4. I think the only one I would consistently pay up for here tonight is Roman Yossi. Jake did not pay me to say that. As I just got a Venmo notification from him. But yeah, I do like Yossi number 1 here. I don't know if I'll be living in that top range if I don't pay up for Yossi. I don't think I'm going to, in my one lineup, I don't think I'm getting to Werenski Hughes. Hedman, if I play Tampa, could be interesting, but I think, with Radish being on the top power play unit, it's probably just Yossi up there for me.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with Hedman is that Radish is just a much cheaper pivot, and he's actually getting ice time now as opposed to just like 16 minutes a game. Stochastic projections have Yossi and Werenski 1-2. By raw fantasy point projections, obviously Yossi is a much better point per dollar value. Werenski is a lot cheaper than he was just like a week ago. It is a brutal matchup, but I feel like if they do get to the Kings, it's probably going to be because Werenski gets involved. Yossi's the better play, but I don't think Werenski should necessarily be discounted if you're playing a bunch of lineups. The mid-price range, there's not a whole lot that I really like there. Jared Spurgeon obviously is fine. Moritz Seider's okay. Jacob Chikrin, probably my favorite in that price range, though I still don't love him. I think it's more the cheaper guys, like we mentioned, Darren Radish, Jordan Spence, as far as we know, still getting power play time for the Kings. Brady Shea is in a good matchup in the 3K-ish range. Artem Zub, as you mentioned, is playing on the top pair. Philip Hronek's only 3K. Still no Tyler Myers. Radko Gudas is in line to get a whole bunch of blocked shots here tonight. Alex Romanov, I think he played 23 or 24 minutes in that first game without Dobson, so he might have to get some ice time here tonight. Luke Hughes is in a really good matchup at a reasonable price. Sean Walker, sub 3K in a decent matchup. Jonas Siegenthaler, sub 3K in a decent matchup. There are a lot of guys under that 4K range that I don't mind here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the range I'll be in under 4K. If I do spend up, it will be for Yossi. Let's talk about the goalies, as Frostback has joined us as we're leaving. Classic Frostback. There are not a lot of goalies confirmed here. In the top range, I think if I'm spending up, I don't even know what I would do, honestly. I think it would be Marc-Andre Fleury. that is horrific. Like, it's not horrific. Like, he's had a decent season. It's just like, if that's your best option, 8K and above, I'm probably not going to be in that range. I don't mind Joseph Woll here at 7,800. Cliffy mentioned how Ottawa just doesn't have high danger passes. Don't mind him. Kevin Lankin at 7,500. Wolf at 7,400 interests me. In the low range, I think, like, if I'm going below Wolf at 7,400, like, I just don't even know. It might be Merzlikins at 7,100 just because the Kings do struggle to score sometime. If you want to play Marcus Hogberg at 7,100 because Carolina could have some, they got new guys, their chemistry could be altered, that's fine. But I honestly don't think I'll go below Wolf here tonight.
Yeah, Fleury and Woll, Joseph Woll, are at the top of my list. Fleury's not Gustafsson, but the Calgary Flames also aren't a good scoring team, so it's not a bad home matchup for him. Woll has a really good road matchup against Ottawa. I think, if you have the money and you just kind of hoping that Anaheim doesn't do what they did to Pittsburgh the other night, then I think Saros is fine as long as he gets to start. But it's probably Fleury or Woll in the more expensive guys. If I go down a bit, Ilya Sorokin was on my list. Obviously, he's not starting, not a Marcus Hogberg guy per se. So I think John Gibson would be the pivot there. But honestly, it would be Dustin Wolf. If Minnesota kind of shats the bed like they did against Utah the other night, Wolf could have a very good night. So I like the goalies on both sides in that Calgary-Minnesota game. Joseph Woll as well would be up there, as well as UC Saros.
Yep. I think we'll be back Monday. I don't know if it's a split set. We might be back every day next week. We'll send out a tweet on Sunday or something. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Matthew Boldy.
Player coming back, Alex Laferriere.
I like it.
Against our Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm sorry. I can't stop killing them. Anyway, good luck, everybody, tonight, and we'll see you next week.
Good luck tonight, everyone.